The steady beeping of the heart monitor echoed through the room, a constant reminder that I was still here. The IV line dripped slowly into my arm as I lay staring at the sterile hospital ceiling, trying to block out the discomfort from my surgery. My body was on the mend, but my mind was restless. 3 days had passed since the procedure I never wanted, yet had no choice but to undergo. Just as I was trying to quiet my thoughts, my phone rang. Glancing at the screen, I saw his name, Dad. I hesitated before answering. We weren't close anymore. I had long accepted that my father, David, only called when he needed something, and I wasn't in the mood to listen to whatever excuse he had this time. But something made me pick up. "Hey, kiddo," he said, his voice too casual. "How are you feeling?" I closed my eyes. Rarely did he ask about me. I should have known that this meant he was about to ask for something. "I'm fine," I replied flatly. "What's up?" There was a brief pause. Then the words came that chilled me to my core. "So, I used your college fund to settle some debts. It's not like you needed it, right?" I shot up so quickly that pain shot through my abdomen, and I instinctively clutched my side, gasping for air. "What?" My voice came out calmer than I expected, almost as if I were watching this unfold from a distance. "Yeah, well, things got tight," he continued, his tone dismissive. "You know how it is. And I figured, well, you've already done some college. You're smart, you'll figure it out." He said it as if it were no big deal, like he hadn't just stolen years of my hard work. I had been saving for that fund since I was 16, through scholarships, part-time jobs, tutoring gigs, every dollar carefully stashed away to ensure I could finish my degree without drowning in debt. That money was meant to cover the final 2 years of school, the last stretch before I could finally move forward in life. And now, he had taken it. I felt my grip tighten on the phone, my heartbeat thudding in my ears. "How much is left?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Another pause. Nothing. It's all gone." I let out a slow breath, my mind running through calculations, but my voice remained eerily steady. "I see," I said flatly. There was silence on the other end of the line before he let out a small chuckle. "That's my girl, always practical. Look, no point in getting upset. What's done is done, right? I mean, it's not like you can get it back, so might as well move on." "Move on," I repeated, glancing around the hospital room, the sterile white walls, the IV in my arm, the bruises from the needles. The college fund wasn't just about tuition, it was my future, my independence, and he had stolen it with a casual ease, as though he'd borrowed my car without asking. "Good luck with that," I said simply. He laughed. "See? That's the attitude I knew you'd have. Anyway, gotta run. Meeting some friends for drinks. We'll catch up when you're out." And just like that, he hung up. I sat there, staring at the phone in my hand. The room felt unnervingly quiet, the weight of what had just happened settling in. I should have been crying, panicking even, but I wasn't. I wasn't that little girl anymore, and this time, I wasn't going to let him get away with it. I picked up my phone and opened my banking app. As expected, the account was empty, zero balance. He had spent every last cent. But what he didn't know was that I had always been prepared. While my main account was drained, there were others he didn't know about, a backup plan. Because when you grow up with a father like David, you learn early never to trust, never to rely, and always to prepare. I wasn't going to scream, wasn't going to beg, but I was going to make sure he regretted ever thinking he could take from me. I lay back down, staring at the ceiling. The pain from my surgery seemed to fade into the background. There was a new fire igniting inside me. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. As soon as I got home from the hospital, I didn't waste any time. I wasn't going to sit around mourning what my father had done. That was the old Sophia, the one who thought family meant unconditional trust. The new me? She knew better. I limped to my desk, still aching from the surgery, and opened my laptop. The hospital discharge papers were still in my bag, barely touched. But this? This was the real priority. First, I logged into my bank account. Empty, just like I expected. But I wasn't just checking the balance. I was looking at the withdrawals, the patterns, the timestamps. Each transaction was a small piece of the puzzle. My father had been careful, draining the account bit by bit over several months, always staying just under the threshold that would trigger fraud alerts. Classic David. He knew how to fly under the radar. I took screenshots of everything, every withdrawal, every transaction. Then I opened my email and pulled up the old scholarship records, the ones that proved I had earned every single cent in that account. Next, I sent an email to my bank, requesting an official statement of all account activity over the past year. David had made one fatal mistake. Yes, he was a co-signer, but the money had been mine. And if there was one thing banks and courts didn't like, it was evidence of financial abuse. I could almost hear his voice in my head. "It's just money, kiddo. No need to get all worked up." No, Dad. It wasn't just money. It wasn't just the money. It was my future. And David had no idea what was about to hit him. I shifted my focus to my actual savings, the ones my father had no clue about. I'd learned long ago to keep secrets, and when I first got my real paycheck as a teenager, I made sure David would never have access to everything. It was a precaution back then, but now, it was my lifeline. I swiftly moved the remaining funds into a brand new account under my name at a different bank, then updated all the passwords, set up two-factor authentication, and closed off every possible way he could get to it. By the time I finished, my finances were completely out of his reach, and that was just the first step. I knew David well enough to anticipate his next move. He wouldn't stop here. He would spend every last cent he had stolen, and soon enough, he'd find himself broke again. That meant another phone call, another excuse, and another lie. So I waited. 3 days later, my phone rang again. "Hey, sweetheart," he greeted, acting as if nothing had happened. "Settled in okay?" I played along, maintaining a calm tone. "Yeah, I'm feeling better. What's up?" He sighed dramatically. "Well, things have been a little tight. That college fund, it didn't cover everything, you know?" I clenched my teeth. The fund he'd stolen had been over $50,000, and somehow, in just a matter of weeks, he'd already blown through it. I had to fight back a laugh. He was so predictable, and that predictability was exactly what I was counting on. "I see," I said, keeping my voice even. "So, what do you need?" There was a small pause before he cleared his throat. "Well, I was thinking you're so good with money. You wouldn't happen to have another account stashed away somewhere, would you? Just a little something to help your old man out." And there it was. My father had stolen from me, betrayed me, and now, barely weeks later, he was coming back for more. I let the silence linger, letting him stew in it. Finally, I said, "I don't know, Dad. Maybe we should talk about this in person." I could hear the relief in his voice. "That's my girl. Let's sit down, just you and me. No need to drag anyone else into it, right?" I smiled to myself, though he couldn't see it. Right. In my head, though, I was thinking, "Oh, Dad, you really think I'm going to let you get away with this?" This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about consequences. And for the first time in his life, David was about to face them. I agreed to meet him at a quiet cafe in town, but not because I wanted to see him. No, I needed to look him in the eye and watch him lie to my face one last time. The moment I walked in, I spotted him right away. David always carried himself like he was the most charming man in the room, but today there was a nervous tension in him. His knee bounced under the table, and his fingers tapped against his coffee cup. I took my time walking over, making him wait. When I finally sat down, I gave him a polite smile. "So, Dad," I said calmly, "what's so urgent?" He chuckled, trying to play it casual. "Sophia, honey, why so formal? Can't a father have coffee with his daughter?" I tilted my head slightly. "You called me here because you need money." His smile faltered for a split second before he forced it back into place. "I mean, yeah, things are a little tight. I figured since you're so responsible, maybe you've got a little saved up." I folded my hands on the table, keeping my gaze steady. "You mean like a college fund?" His eyes flickered with unease, but he quickly laughed it off. "Sweetheart, don't be like that. I told you what's done is done. No point in dwelling on the past." No point in dwelling? He had stolen from me, and now, with that same casual charm, he expected me to just hand over more. I let the silence drag out. I'd learned that silence made him nervous. Finally, I sighed. "You know, Dad, I actually do have some money saved." His posture instantly shifted. His shoulders relaxed, and his eyes brightened. "That's my girl," he said, reaching across the table as if we were on the same side. "See? I knew you'd understand. Just a little loan. I'll pay you back, just like I promised when I drained your college fund." I leaned forward, locking eyes with him. "I just have one question." He nodded eagerly. "Of course, anything." I smiled, keeping my voice calm. "Why don't you just use the money from your secret account?" For the first time since I walked in, David's entire body froze. He was caught off guard, fear flickering in his eyes. His mind raced, desperately trying to figure out if I was bluffing. What?" he stammered, his laugh coming out forced. I pulled out my phone and set it on the table, screen facing up. "I know about the account in your name," I said, my tone steady. "The one you thought I wouldn't find." His face twisted into something darker, but I wasn't done yet. "I know you've been moving money into it for years. While you were borrowing from me, you were stashing money away for yourself. And I know that even after you stole my college fund, you've got enough saved to live comfortably." I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. "So tell me, Dad, why exactly should I be the one helping you?" For the first time in my life, I saw it. Fear. His jaw clenched, his eyes darted around, searching for an escape. I never expected to see David panic. He had always been good at talking his way out of tight situations, convincing people to lend him money, forgive his debts, and overlook his behavior. But he had never prepared for this moment, for me to be the one holding all the cards. His voice dropped low. "How did you find out?" I smiled. "I had help." I paused for effect. "My Aunt Lisa, a lawyer, helped me track everything down, and my grandmother Margaret, your own mother, was furious when she found out." I leaned forward slightly, enjoying the shift in his demeanor. When I first told her, I expected disappointment. But instead, she looked me straight in the eye and said, "It's time he learns what it means to face real consequences." And that's exactly what's happening right now. David's hand tightened around his coffee cup, his mask of control slipping. "Sophia, listen." I raised a hand, cutting him off. "No, you listen." I tapped the screen of my phone, showing him the open email draft, an email addressed to my bank, detailing his financial abuse. His face went pale. I kept my voice steady. "You have two options. 1. You pay back every single cent you stole from me. I don't care if it takes years. I want it all back." David swallowed hard. "And the second option," I continued, my voice calm but firm. "I press charges for fraud, theft, and financial abuse. Once I report you, the IRS is going to take a very close look at your finances, including that secret account of yours." I could see the color drain from his face, and I knew he understood. He wasn't just facing the loss of money. He was staring at the possibility of prison time. David had always thought he was untouchable, that he could lie, manipulate, and talk his way out of anything. But this time, he had picked the wrong person to steal from. I picked up my coffee and took a slow sip, meeting his eyes with a calm intensity. "So, what's it going to be, Dad?" For the first time in his life, David was speechless, and I had never felt more powerful. He didn't answer right away. He sat there, gripping his coffee cup as if it were the only thing keeping him grounded. I watched his jaw tighten, his nostrils flare. He was angry, angrier than I had ever seen him. But this wasn't the anger of an innocent man. This was the anger of someone who had just realized he had lost control. "You wouldn't do that," he finally said, his voice low and shaky. I raised an eyebrow. "Wouldn't I?" He let out a forced laugh, shaking his head. "Sophia, sweetheart, this is family. You don't go around threatening your own father." I stared at him, expression blank. "You stole my future. You don't get to talk to me about family." The words hit their mark. His smirk faltered, but only for a second. David was a survivor. He had spent his entire life talking his way out of trouble, and now he was scrambling to regain control. His voice softened, slipping into that fake warmth he always used when he wanted something. "Sophia, listen, I know you're upset, I get it. But this is going too far." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. Too far? Too far was stealing from me while I was in the hospital. Too far was gambling away my future and acting like it was no big deal. He started to speak, but I held up a hand, silencing him. "Let me be very clear," I said, my voice steady. "I'm done playing your games. I have everything I need to take you down. The only reason I'm giving you a choice is because I'm kind. Don't mistake that for weakness." The silence between us felt heavy. David looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. The daughter he had underestimated. The girl he thought he could manipulate forever. I let the silence stretch just long enough for my words to sink in. Then, I stood up, sliding my phone back into my pocket. "You have 1 week," I said. "I expect the first payment by then. If I don't get it, I make the call." I picked up my bag, slung it over my shoulder, and walked out, not looking back. I didn't waste time waiting for David to do the right thing. I knew him too well for that. Instead, I got to work. First, I sent copies of all my evidence to Aunt Lisa. She had already been researching my options, and now that I had confronted David, she was ready to move forward. "Smart move, giving him a deadline," she told me over the phone. "It forces his hand. He either pays up or he panics." I had a feeling it would be the latter. Next, I made a few calls. My university's financial aid office had already been helpful, but now that I had concrete proof of financial abuse, they were willing to assist even further. They helped me apply for emergency grants, and I was able to secure enough funding to cover at least 1 semester. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. And then, I waited. David lasted exactly 5 days before the calls started. At first, they were casual. Day 5, 10:14 a.m. "Hey kiddo, just checking in. Hope you're doing okay." Ignored. Day 5, 3:42 p.m. "Look, Sophia, I think we should talk. There's no need to be so drastic about all this." Ignored. Day 6, 9:21 a.m. "Okay, this is getting ridiculous. You can't just cut your own father off like this." Ignored. By day 7, the desperation finally cracked through. Day 7, 11:56 p.m. "Please, Sophia, I don't have the money. I can't pay you back. Just give me some time." I stared at the message for a long time before replying. "Me time won't magically bring back my money. Find a way." His response came almost immediately. "David, you're being heartless." I couldn't help but laugh. Heartless? This was the same man who had stolen from his own daughter while she was in a hospital bed, recovering. And somehow, I was the one being called heartless? I turned off my phone and let myself fall into sleep, letting the weight of everything I'd just done settle in. The next morning, my grandmother Margaret's call came through. "He showed up at my house last night," she said, her voice cold with disapproval. "Tried to get me to talk to you." I ground my teeth together. "What did you tell him?" "I told him he made his bed, and now he has to lie in it." A warmth spread through my chest. My grandmother Margaret had always been the one person David truly feared. He had spent years testing boundaries with everyone else, but never with her. She was the one line he had never dared to cross, until now. "He's panicking," she went on, "and when David panics, he gets sloppy." She wasn't wrong. Just 2 hours later, I received a text from my cousin Noah. "Noah, yo? Uncle David just called me, tried to convince me to co-sign a loan for him." I almost dropped my phone. Co-sign a loan? David had never been this desperate before. He was running out of people to manipulate, and he knew it. This wasn't just about my money anymore. He was sinking, and now he was trying to drag anyone down with him. I took a steadying breath. It was time for the final phase. David thought he had everyone figured out, that he was always the one pulling the strings. But now, he was about to learn what it felt like to be the one trapped with no way out. And I was the one holding the key. David had run out of options, and he knew it. By the end of the week, the calls went from desperate to downright pleading. He was losing control, and for the first time, I think he finally understood what that felt like. Day 8, 7:32 a.m. "Sophia, we need to talk. I can't come up with the money that fast. Let's work something out." Ignored. Day 9, 5:47 p.m. "Your grandmother Margaret turned you against me, didn't she?" I always knew she wanted to make me look bad. Laughed and ignored. Day 10, 9:12 p.m. Sophia, please, I don't have anywhere to turn. I finally responded. Me? You had options. You chose to steal from me instead. His reply came instantly. David, it wasn't like that. You don't understand how much pressure I was under. Me. Yet you had enough to blow my money on gambling and drinking. David, I swear I'll fix this. Just give me time. I stared at the message, hearing his smooth, practiced tone in my mind. The same tone he'd used my entire life whenever he wanted to avoid consequences. But this time, it wouldn't work. Not anymore. It was time to close the trap. The next morning, I made my final move. I sent the full documentation to my university, reinforcing my request for additional aid. Within hours, a senior administrator replied, telling me they had reviewed my case and were offering an emergency grant to cover my remaining tuition. Step 1. Secure my future. I then forwarded all the evidence of my father's financial abuse, the bank statements, the stolen funds, the text admitting to it, to Aunt Lisa. She called me immediately. Are you sure you want to go through with this? Yes. She let out a low whistle. All right then, let's burn this to the ground. Step 2. Make David accountable. That evening, I made the final move. I didn't call him. I didn't text him. Instead, I sent screenshots of his messages and proof of his secret account to our family group chat. Then I let the fire spread. The explosion was immediate. My phone exploded with messages, some in disbelief, others in furious outrage. Aunt Caroline, he stole from his own daughter? Cousin Noah, didn't he do something similar to Grandmother Margaret a few years ago? Uncle James, I always knew David was bad with money, but this is insane. Within an hour, the entire family had turned on him, and David finally cracked. He called, and this time, I answered. What the hell did you do? His voice was shaking with rage. I didn't answer. I let him stew in the silence. He exhaled sharply. You're ruining me, Sophia. Do you understand that? I smiled to myself. No, Dad, you ruined yourself. You don't get it. They're turning against me. My own family is cutting me off. I shrugged. Sounds like consequences. His breathing was ragged on the other end of the line. Sophia, please. This is my life you're destroying. I gripped my phone tightly, thinking about all the times he'd stolen from me, lied to me, and used me. And then I thought about the last time I trusted him, when I was lying in that hospital bed and he stole my future right from under me. And now, he wanted mercy? You know what's funny, Dad? I said, my voice unnervingly calm. That's exactly how I felt when you emptied my account. Silence. He had no response this time. No excuses left. I took a slow breath, savoring the moment. You made your bed, now lie in it. And then I hung up. David tried to fight back. First, he went to my grandmother Margaret, desperate for sympathy. She turned him away. Then he attempted to convince my mother to mediate. She laughed in his face. Desperate, he tried to gaslight the family, spinning the story about how I had exaggerated everything. But the proof I sent was undeniable. Every lie he told was instantly countered by the receipts. Within days, he had lost all financial support from the family. By the end of the week, Aunt Lisa had filed a formal demand letter. If he didn't start paying me back, we would take legal action. I heard from my grandmother Margaret that David was scrambling, trying to find a way out. He had spent his entire life manipulating people, convincing them to clean up his messes. But for the first time, there was no one left to save him, no one but himself. And for a man like David, that was the most devastating punishment of all. David stopped calling after the family I cut him off completely. Aunt Lisa sent the legal paperwork, and with it, the flood of desperate messages and calls finally came to an end. The silence that followed was almost unnerving, almost. But I knew better. Men like David didn't just disappear. They hid and plotted their next move. I wasn't surprised when my grandmother Margaret called a week later. He's trying to spin the story, she said, her voice laced with frustration. Telling everyone you exaggerated everything, that you embarrassed him for no reason. I couldn't help but laugh. Of course he is. She sighed heavily. And he's saying he's thinking about leaving town. Wants a fresh start. A fresh start. That was David's go-to move. Whenever things got too difficult, whenever people stopped supporting him, whenever his lies caught up to him, he ran. It was exactly what he'd done when I was younger, when his failed business ventures almost left us homeless. He'd uprooted us without warning, moved us to a new city, a new life, as if nothing had ever happened. But this time, he wasn't running from mistakes. He was running from consequences. Let him, I said, my voice calm. I don't care where he goes, just as long as he knows he's not escaping this. No matter how far he runs, the legal debt will follow him. Every month he'll remember me. The daughter he underestimated. The future he tried to steal but failed to take. David had been able to fool people before, but now? His reputation was in ruins, and the money that had been rightfully mine was finally in my hands. The next few months were strange. After everything I'd gone through to reclaim what was taken from me, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: peace. Thanks to the repayments David had been forced to start, I was able to finish my degree. The university, now fully aware of my situation, worked with me to adjust my final semester so I could balance part-time work with my studies. It wasn't easy, but I was free. And that made every long night, every extra shift, every moment of exhaustion worth it. I wasn't waiting for someone else to fix things anymore. And more importantly, I wasn't waiting for David's approval. He called me one last time. It had been almost a year since I last heard from him. I let the phone ring, my thumb hovering over the decline button. But something inside me urged me to pick up, to hear what he had to say. I answered. "Sophia," he breathed, his voice carefully controlled. I didn't respond. "I heard you graduated," he said, almost sounding surprised. That's great. I always knew you were smart." I closed my eyes, recognizing the fishing attempt. He was trying to test the waters, to see if I had softened, but I didn't give him any satisfaction. He cleared his throat, trying again. "Listen, I was thinking maybe we should talk. Clear the air. I mean, we're still family, right?" I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. He hadn't changed. David wasn't apologizing. He was just hoping I had forgotten, that I had let my guard down, waiting for a chance to worm his way back in. I finally spoke, my voice even. "No, Dad, we're not." There was silence, thick with tension. Then the anger crept into his voice. "Oh, so that's it? You get your little revenge, and now you think you're better than me?" I smiled, a small, cold smile. "No, I just don't need you anymore." And I hung up. This time, I knew he wouldn't call again. A few weeks later, a letter arrived from my grandmother Margaret. Inside was a note written in her precise, elegant handwriting. "I want you to know how proud I am of you. You didn't just fight back, you turned it into something stronger. That's more than your father ever managed." Beneath the letter was a small, folded piece of paper. I opened it and felt my breath catch in my throat. It was a check from her, for the exact amount David had stolen from me. I called her immediately. "Grandma Margaret, I can't take this." "Yes, you can," she said firmly. "And you will." "But Sophia," she interrupted, "you've already earned that money once. This isn't charity, it's me making things right." Tears threatened to spill as I fought to keep my composure. She sighed. "I don't want his theft to define you, sweetheart. I want you to move forward without carrying that weight." I swallowed, my voice thick. "Thank you." She chuckled softly. "Don't thank me. Just promise me one thing." "Anything." She paused, as if considering her next words carefully. "Promise me you'll never let anyone, family or not, take advantage of you again." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of her words sink into my heart. "I promise." And this time, I knew with every ounce of my being that I would keep that promise. David lost everything. The family cut him off permanently. His reputation was destroyed. And every month, he would be reminded that I was no longer his safety net. As for me, I thrived. I built a life for myself, without him. I found success despite him. And the best part? He got to watch it all unfold, knowing that he had no part in it. The greatest revenge wasn't the money, It was freedom,